Imagine driving across the Australian outback and seeing kangaroos everywhere. They gather beside roads, move through grasslands, appear around farms, and sometimes seem to outnumber the people living nearby. Australia has tens of millions of kangaroos and wallabies across its vast landscapes, and their populations can become extremely large when food and water conditions are favorable. So here's the strange question: if Australia has so many kangaroos, why don't Australians eat kangaroo meat as commonly as Americans eat beef or chicken? The surprising answer is that Australians actually do eat kangaroo. You can find it in some supermarkets, restaurants, and specialty butcher shops. But compared with beef, chicken, and pork, kangaroo remains a niche meat. And the reason has very little to do with whether kangaroo is edible. In fact, kangaroo meat has several characteristics that sound almost perfect for a modern food. Kangaroo meat is extremely lean. It contains substantial amounts of protein while generally having very little fat. It also provides nutrients such as iron and zinc. Because kangaroos are native to Australia and naturally survive on vegetation without the enormous quantities of grain required by intensive livestock systems, some people view kangaroo as a potentially efficient source of animal protein. On paper, it sounds like a perfect Australian alternative to beef. But then reality gets complicated. The first problem is that kangaroos are wildlife, not conventional livestock. A cow can be born on a farm, monitored throughout its life, vaccinated when necessary, fed a controlled diet, transported through regulated systems, and eventually processed at a specialized facility. A kangaroo spends its life in the wild. It can travel enormous distances across open country, move through difficult terrain, and live in environments that humans cannot easily control. That makes harvesting much more complicated. You can't simply build a giant kangaroo barn and raise them like cattle. Kangaroos are adapted to Australia's environment, not to life as domesticated farm animals. Their reproductive biology is also unusual. Female kangaroos can give birth to a tiny, undeveloped joey that continues developing inside the mother's pouch. This means that when a female is harvested, there may be a dependent joey that also becomes part of the ethical and management equation. And this leads to one of the biggest controversies surrounding kangaroo meat. How do you harvest an animal that people also see as a symbol of Australia? Kangaroos aren't just another wild species. They are one of the country's most recognizable animals. They're on Australia's coat of arms. They're used in tourism campaigns, sports logos, and national imagery. Millions of people around the world immediately associate the kangaroo with Australia itself. That creates a cultural conflict. To one person, a kangaroo may be a wild animal that needs population management. To another, it is an iconic creature that should be protected. Those opposing views have made kangaroo harvesting a subject of intense debate inside Australia. But there is an important ecological reason why controlled harvesting exists in the first place. Kangaroo populations can increase dramatically under favorable conditions. When rainfall produces abundant vegetation and water, populations can expand. In areas where natural predators are limited and human activity has changed the landscape, kangaroos may become extremely numerous. Large populations can put pressure on available vegetation and compete with livestock for food. This sounds like the perfect argument for eating them. If there are too many kangaroos, why not simply turn them into food? Because wildlife management isn't that simple. Population numbers can change dramatically from one region to another and from one year to the next. Drought can reduce populations sharply. Good rainfall can cause them to rebound. A harvesting quota that might be appropriate under one environmental condition could be excessive under another. That's why regulated harvesting systems use quotas, species restrictions, seasons, and monitoring. And there is another problem. Kangaroo meat is incredibly lean. That sounds healthy, but fat is extremely important in food production. Fat adds flavor, calories, tenderness, and cooking flexibility. Beef can be transformed into steaks, burgers, sausages, roasts, and countless processed foods partly because different cuts contain different amounts of fat. Kangaroo is much leaner. If cooked incorrectly, it can become tough and dry. That makes preparation more important, and consumers accustomed to fatty beef or chicken may not immediately prefer it. Then there's the psychological factor. Australians have spent generations eating cattle, sheep, pigs, and chickens. Those animals became part of everyday agriculture and cuisine. Kangaroos remained wildlife. You might see one on a road trip, photograph it, and watch it hop across the landscape. That relationship makes the idea of eating it uncomfortable for many people. This is one of the most powerful forces in food culture. Humans don't eat only what is biologically available. We eat what our societies have decided is food. In some cultures, eating kangaroo feels completely normal. In others, the idea is almost unthinkable. The same animal can be considered dinner in one country and a protected symbol in another. There is also an international perception problem. Kangaroo meat has been exported to several markets, but some consumers are uncomfortable with the idea of eating wild animals. That limits demand and prevents the industry from becoming anything like the global beef or chicken industries. So here's the paradox. Australia has enormous numbers of kangaroos. Kangaroo meat is nutritious. It can be harvested legally under regulated systems, and it can provide a very lean source of protein. Yet kangaroo hasn't replaced beef, because abundance isn't enough. The animal must also be easy to manage, economical to process, culturally accepted, and capable of supporting a stable food industry. Kangaroos fail the livestock test because they were never really designed to become livestock. They are extraordinarily well adapted to surviving Australia's harsh environment, but that same independence makes them difficult to control and farm. So the next time you see a kangaroo standing beside an Australian highway, remember the strange contradiction. You're looking at an animal that can become food, and sometimes does become food, but will probably never become Australia's version of the cow. Because the question was never whether Australia could eat more kangaroo. The real question is whether Australians want to transform one of their most recognizable wild animals into an ordinary piece of meat. And for millions of people, the answer remains: not everything that can become dinner needs to become dinner.